Hey everybody, welcome to Forkless Cafe. I am Andrew, Hedera Hashgraph's social media manager. This is our weekly live stream where we have the opportunity to share all the recent DLT highlights and insights with all of you. So if you're in the live chat and you're joining us live, please make sure to drop a hello in the live chat. Let us know where you're coming from today. And if you have questions for myself or our guest, throw them in the live chat. And if you're watching the recording, make sure you throw a comment down there for us and we'll make sure we get more information to you. And we tend to use these live streams to highlight the stuff that's trending, highlight the stuff that people are talking about, what they care about, and then some of the bigger announcements that were published the previous week. So having said all of that, we're going to discuss some articles that were published recently. And if you're joining us for the very first time, I'm going to make sure to include those in the description below this video. So if you're watching the recording, you'll be able to follow along. We won't dive too deeply into each article simply because this would be a 3-hour live stream if that was the case. But we certainly like to provide them for you to give you the opportunity to do a little deeper dive into that research if you come across content that you need to learn more about. So with all that being said, let's move on here. We're going to get the disclaimer out of the way. So our weekly agenda is our objective is to share interesting Dapp news in the industry and the Hashgraph ecosystem. We are going to start things off, kick things off with a guest intro, Dapp highlights, Hedera highlights, and then finally our hero of the week. So I would love to pass the floor over to Jesse. And actually, before I introduce Jesse, I apologize. I should quickly note that Sharon is very lucky and on vacation today. I hope she's not watching this because she should be in Grand Cayman right about now enjoying the sun. So we've got Anthony, our marketing specialist, who is our community marketing specialist, who's going to be manning the live chat for us. So so Anthony, feel free to let us know if anyone's got some questions for us today. And other than that, Jesse and I are going to kick things off. So Jesse, I'm going to pass the mic over to you. I got a little bio here. Why don't you share a little bit of yourself with people who haven't come across you before? Give us a little bit of your background, how you first came to get to know Hedera or the Hashgraph algorithm, and thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm always happy to be here and share in all things Hedera. I first learned about Hashgraph in an episode of Hidden Forces, which is a podcast by Dimitri Kofinas. I always highly recommend it to anybody. And I think he's had Leemon and Mance on several times now. The most recent one I think was just after the mainnet went live, maybe in late September or something. So definitely check those out. But when I first heard about it, I was on an episode, maybe, I don't know, probably late 2017 or somewhere around there. And that's when I did my research in the project. I thought it was incredible. Had been interested in digital currencies before that. Nothing formal, just, personal speculation and things like that. But once I heard about this, I felt a little bit more strongly about it, just resonated with me, which I'm sure is what a lot of people have that same experience when they watch Leemon speak specifically. So just watching him speak and listening to him and Dimitri talk about the platform, I thought, well, I better learn some more about this. I did a little research, and then I connected way back in the day with, I think, Kyle Armour when he was still running the ambassador program. That was probably sometime around 2017, 2018. And so I've just kind of been hanging around since then, keeping up on things and checking in as time allows. So.
Right on. Actually, I can relate to you on that because I also joined the ambassador program when Kyle was running it. So so that's how I first came to know the project as well, and how I was introduced. My thought process was getting closer to the horse's mouth, in a sense, would get me closer to the source of the information. Because like you, I was also, I guess, mesmerized by the way Dr. Leemon Baird shares this content. He's obviously very passionate about all of this stuff, and that shows. And he's just a natural teacher. And thanks for highlighting Dimitri's podcast, Hidden Forces. I will also make sure to include that in the description below this for everybody, because he does pump out some amazing content, and I think more people need to be aware of his podcast for sure. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And So I've got a short bio of you here with a picture. Can you fill us in on what this picture is all about?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to attend the I guess the unveiling of Hedera in New York in, was it April maybe of 2018?
Yeah, I think it was March. Yep.
Was it March? Yeah. Oh, it was great. I was going to be traveling there, so I thought, this is great that this coincides with the event, and yeah, it was wonderful. This is just after a few of the other ambassadors and I were lucky enough to chat with Leemon for a bit and have a photo there. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. To where it is now, to where it was then, is pretty remarkable, really. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's been a lot of progress in a relatively short period of time. Sometimes it may feel things are moving quite slowly, but then when you look at the performance metrics and the governing council members and everything that's been accomplished in a relatively short period of time, it's quite amazing. So yeah, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And so we're going to start things off with Dapp highlights. We got a Medium article about DragonGlass. We're going to talk about carbon a little bit. Then we have some Hedera highlights. There's some predictions from 2020 and a Forbes article. And then we actually have 3 YouTube videos links to touch on as well. So let me move over to the links here. And then following that, we're going to have some social sizzlers too. Okay, so we're going to touch on this Medium article, which in my opinion has not got enough traction or has not got enough attention. If you are a developer, more specifically, if you are, and before I forget, I should actually say this before we jump into the news. If you are a developer working hard on building dApps, before I forget, you should really take some time to visit docs.hedera.com/docs. And I'm going to show you the link at the end of the live stream because you're going to find some amazing documentation there to help you start down your journey. And the Hashgraph ecosystem as a whole is further becoming more and more robust all the time. Like specifically what we're talking about here right now, DragonGlass is making things easier and easier every single day for developers to do what they care about and what they're passionate about. So scrolling down here, this Medium article, I wanted to highlight this section. The good news is that 10,000 TPS, transactions per second, is just the start and a lot more is yet to come. This public decentralized platform satisfies one of the urgent needs and the most requested requirement that constrains the building of real-life decentralized applications. That need for the last several years has been high throughput and low latency. And I wanted to touch on that for all the developers watching, or if you know of a developer that requires high throughput and low latency, you will not want to look any further than Hedera Hashgraph. We've built the technology from the ground up with sharding in mind. So the idea is latency will never be an issue because we will deploy sharding when it's needed to keep the time to finality in a very reasonable time. We keep hearing from developers how impressed they are with our performance metrics. And I'll touch on that in a little bit too. I should scroll down here a little bit. I'm not a developer, heads up, I am not a developer. But I know this article will be very helpful to developers. What they say here is the DragonGlass platform for Hedera developers. We designed DragonGlass to serve the needs, here, let me highlight this, to serve the needs of Dapp development teams. Our goal is to provide developers the ability to build serverless applications. Between the Hedera platform and DragonGlass, developers should be able to execute transactions on Hedera and gain insight access to all their data on DragonGlass. We aim at being an operational data store for your dApps, and there's the link right there. So this article, it has not got enough attention, in my opinion, as far as what developers are needing out there, made by Open Crowd here. And yeah, I wanted to highlight this first on the live stream because this tool, DragonGlass, this dApp, is going to do nothing but good things for developers moving forward. Okay, moving on. We've got a great article here, Carbon, making buying and selling crypto simple through an API for fiat-to-crypto and crypto-to-fiat conversions. One of the major complaints you'll see people touching on these days when it comes to this technology is just the high friction. And Carbon is just one of those many dApps that is working really hard to reduce the friction for onboarding. I think they're very successful at that. So we're going to touch on a couple things in the article here. One thing I just wanted to quickly share with everyone is Carbon was one of our first 26 dApps that we launched with on September 16th when the mainnet went live. We're currently in beta, and Carbon was one of the first that announced with us. They also made a presentation at Hedera 18, which was our developer conference last year in Dallas. And so you'll be able to find their presentation on our YouTube channel if you'd like to learn more. So how can you describe Carbon if it was in a single tweet here? Carbon makes buying, who are they talking to? Miles Albert, their co-founder and chief strategy officer. Carbon makes buying and selling crypto simple through an API for fiat-to-crypto and crypto-to-fiat conversions. Our fiat-backed stablecoin Carbon USD recently launched on Hedera Hashgraph, the next generation distributed ledger blockchain alternative. And then scrolling down here a little bit, I wanted to touch on this. It says right here, users can purchase and redeem Carbon USD tokens through the Fiber API rails, and recipients, i.e. merchants, can benefit from the fast and cheap settlement on the higher throughput distributed ledgers, including Hedera Hashgraph, which achieves transaction finality within an average of 3 seconds. And this has been a point that we have highlighted for you because we keep getting more and more positive feedback from developers about these performance metrics. And if you're a developer and you would like to see for yourself, what you can do is just simply go to hedera.com and scroll down. This is our website. It shows our current governing council members that have been made public. So we've got some big names here: Boeing, Deutsche Telekom, DLA Piper, FIS, IBM, Megaloo, formerly known as Magazine Luiza, Nomura, Swisscom Blockchain, and Tata Communications. And then just keep scrolling down past all of this to our 4 native services. And finally here, network metrics. So the article does state 3 seconds. And when before we reached open access on September 16th, we did say multiple times that we would reach finality between 3 and 5 seconds. But as you can see, under our current situation, we're actually reaching finality at 1.91 seconds, something that we're extremely proud of considering that the mainnet has only been live for a couple months. So yeah, very excited about that. And was there anything else in here that I wanted to touch on? Yeah, Carbon's doing some exciting things. I think that's everything that I wanted to touch on there. But I know we wanted to quickly share a project that Jesse is working on. And I'm going to turn the mic back over to Jesse because we suspect, a lot of people in the industry suspect that these early adopters, these dApps that are lowering that friction, are simply going to pave the way and make these DLT technology more user-friendly to all kinds of use cases out there. So I wanted to turn the floor over to Jesse there so we can share some more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. We were talking just before we went live on the chat here about how much I appreciate projects like Carbon, and it seems like there's this competition for this base layer and on all of the rails that are sort of being laid now. And something that I've been thinking about for a while, it's called the Decent Project. You guys may have seen this before. There's nothing I can share any links to or anything. There's nothing live yet. Still very much in ideation, and we're just working on partnerships and how it could potentially work. But the consensus is that we would need users to be familiar with transacting and storing and sending and receiving digital currency to even have a shot at running something like this out. So that's why I'm following everything as closely as I have been to see where we are along the lines of these developments. And I think Carbon's a great example. I just watched YouTube with their founder talking about relief efforts in Haiti, I think, and they were transporting gasoline. And to think that, their digital currency is somehow affiliated with that even now is pretty mind-boggling. So good for them, and I love watching stories like that. But yeah, I think that Hedera is definitely, anybody who's looking for high volume transactions, I mean, I can't imagine they wouldn't be looking at Hedera. I love to see Hedera mentioned in these articles, like the predictions for the 2020 article that you have before. I'm reading through it and I'm seeing Hyperledger Fabric, and we know that Hedera had partnered with them, and we see other big names like that. And now Hedera is starting to pop up in these articles, which I think is great. But the Decent project is it's sort of a socialized network, and what we're trying to do is have more of a real-time environment where people who are less served portions of society, who like caregivers or school teachers, people that really are undervalued and really undercompensated, that can somehow have additional incentive for the work that they are providing and the goods and services that they provide to communities. So I thought it would be nice, and a lot of people that have the digital currency now are just speculating on it. Some of them have become wealthy, and some not. Some have probably gone the other way if they got it at the wrong time. But I think there are a fair number of people who have digital currency are not quite sure how tax laws apply, and if there was ways that they could spend it and to do good, I think some of them might be interested in that. So we've been looking at potential partnerships to make some of the contributions tax deductible in certain jurisdictions. That opens up a whole nother headache, but we're talking about just doing it locally here. I'm just north of Chicago, and I wanted to make it a very local sort of project, even though it's decentralized would be hosted on the network. It would be something that people can really engage in, as far as people that they even know, or maybe you have somebody who was in hospice and the caregiver did great work for your family, and you think they deserve to be compensated above and beyond what they may be compensated. So I look at those underserved portions of the community who are adding so much more value than they're taking, and finding a way to balance that out. So that's sort of what the project is in a nutshell. If anybody's interested, feel free to reach out, email me, contact me on Telegram. I'd love to tell you more. But
right on. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll make sure to include your email or your Telegram contact information, whichever you prefer there, Jesse, in the description below. So yeah, shoot that to me and I'll get that included. And so what, just really quickly, what kind of contacts or partnerships are you looking for? You stated probably more locally based in Chicago. Yep. So like, can you elaborate further? Just curious of what kind of partnerships are going to be valuable for you and for them?
Well, I think the peer-to-peer connections will be the way that we start it, hopefully, and that would just be direct interaction. There was a couple use cases that we thought about doing, which is partnering with a company like Habitat for Humanity, who builds houses and performs a lot of other things that people don't really look into. But we actually thought, would it be cool to buy some city property in blighted neighborhoods and partner with a company like that, fund this thing through the Decent project, and have a few houses that could be restored. I mean, it really could be anything. And then once people gain access to and have profiles on the site, they would be able to share what they're doing, whether they're in the donate side or the receive side, or they're just there to see what's going on. I just think it would be great if there was a mechanism for some of these folks that are so clearly adding so much more than they're taking to their local communities, and to do it in a way that is very measurable, like to have something actually happen. So to be able to point to something and say, this funded this, and this, just to start really small with one example like that, I think would be great to see something actually come of it. So many of these projects is grand ideas and and best of intentions, I'm sure, but I'm looking at it as a very small, very incubator style thing to start, see if we can make one thing happen and then see what happens from there. So we're probably still a ways out, though. Like I said, the rails have to be in place. People have to own this stuff. They have to be comfortable storing it, sending it, and receiving it. And that's such a small population. I look at #info this morning just to see the wallet creation just for Hedera, which is up to 27,000 now, which is incredible, because last week I think it was maybe around 20. So that's a pretty big jump. 25% jump in a week or something is pretty remarkable. So if that sustains, you can imagine what it looks like a year from now. And that would just be Hedera. I mean, obviously these things are interoperable. So it's exciting. It seems like it's such in its infancy now. So sorry, I'm probably rambling.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thank you for pointing some really important, pointing out some really important areas there just now, because you're talking about transparency, and anytime you're dealing with charitable contributions, I think that's probably the first question that comes to people's minds. Where exactly are the funds going? And can you prove to me that the funds that I contributed to such and such a project were actually contributed in the way that you stated? And the ultimate question that people ask when it comes to distributed ledger technology is, because a lot of, I think you were almost alluding to it, some companies and use cases out there are trying to onboard onto DLT, but they don't exactly need DLT. And the ultimate question is, do you require trust amongst multiple parties, multiple entities? And if the answer is yes, then DLT is clearly for you. So the answer would be yes in charitable contributions, because you do require trust amongst multiple entities. So knowing that if someone were to make a change, then everyone else will know about that change. And because now you've distributed that trust in the DLT technology that you're using. And yeah, no, you're highlighting there are trust factors, there are trust issues, I should say, in the charity world. And I love that you're highlighting that there are many people in those industries, volunteers or non-for-profit enterprises that do incredible work worldwide. And I think you've got a great plan. You start small in your local community in Chicago. You're basically working on a minimum viable product. Once you prove it in a smaller setting, then you'll be able to scale up there with the right partners and the right people. And perfect example, reaching out to Habitat of Humanity. They would probably be a great partner to take a look at, and hopefully someone watching can hook you guys up, hook up a phone call or an email or something. But yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. That's incredible. I commend you. I think there needs to be a lot more attention and focus in this. You're right. I think I also saw something about Carbon talking about charitable contributions to Haiti. I lived in Haiti some years ago for a short period of time, and it is a country that unfortunately experiences a lot of problems and a lot of natural disasters, unfortunately, earthquakes and hurricanes and all kinds of things. And certainly there are certainly communities down there that could use some relief, some help, amongst other communities around the world. And if we had a system like Decent that's built in a way that we can all trust, then you can rely on it. And like you said, people need to be using these systems in a more widespread basis, or more mass adopted is what I'm trying to say. Now I'm rambling, but
no,
in a more mass
thank
adopted.
you for bringing that up. I kind of glossed over the use case as in general, and I'm glad you kind of backed up a minute on that, because it's true. Like, why would you even need it? So this is the first thing that came to my mind actually a few years ago when I was thinking about why would somebody need this? Well, you read about these articles with misappropriation of funds, or if you're donating funds to somewhere abroad, maybe, how do you even know, what gets there, what gets intercepted by local government, what types of intermediaries are there between you and the end user? So that to me is so clear, but I should mention it. People watching this probably wouldn't have thought of that. But the other cool thing is with smart contracts now, I think you can have goal-orientated contributions where you might say, well, if this happens, then I'm all in. But if you guys are just all talk and you're thinking about doing this and it's never going to get there, then I'm not sure it's something I want to participate in. So I think having, that sort of that baked into the smart contract style contribution system would be great as well, to where people could be a part of something if they're able to make it happen. If not, or if the person receiving the funds or the entity receiving the funds falls short of their goals, then they wouldn't be, they could be refunded. So that's another layer of sort of incentivizing people to want to make change in that way. So.
Yeah, and the only thing that I'd like to add there is we're also in this industry, we're desperately waiting for more clear regulations. And quite oftentimes when someone makes a charitable contribution, you know, like, yes, they're helping a cause, but they're probably also looking for the tax benefit of making these charitable contributions. And until we get that regulatory clarity, someone who's making a massive contribution to a charity is also going to want that tax receipt to submit at tax time and receive that, like you're just talking about the incentivization aspect, right? That's important. You can't ignore these subjects. And until we have that regulatory clarity from tax authorities worldwide, these charitable contributions are probably going to remain a little bit on the smaller side. You're not going to receive those massive taxable contributions, right? So, yeah, okay. Yeah, fantastic project, Jesse. I truly commend you what you're working on there, and I hope you get all kinds of support and look forward to touching base with you again in the future on this. So right on. And and you alluded to earlier this Forbes article. We got one more article here to review: predictions 2020 distributed ledger technology moves beyond proof of concept. So great article by Forrester that Forbes then republished. And it says right here, while there are still occasional headlines featuring DLT as the miracle cure for some intractable problem or other, the irrational exuberance of mid-decade has firmly replaced by pragmatic and realistic approaches to blockchain projects. The projects underway in North America and Europe today may be fewer in number, but they're among the main serious enterprise endeavors rather than speculative proofs of concept. I think this is a valuable statement, especially touching on what we were just discussing, because, quote, you know, crypto winter, a lot of people were talking about crypto winter. Arguably, it was a good thing. And I certainly believe so. And now we're able to focus on the real projects that actually matter and are actually going to make a difference and make the world a better place. I think ultimately that's the goal here. This technology is only going to generate steam if we're able to solve big problems. And then they have three predictions here. More than 80% of blockchain deployments will be hybrid or multi-cloud or both. Interoperability will move center stage. And then finally here, where they mention Hedera Hashgraph, the public versus private permission blockchain debate will reach executive teams. While it's not realistic today to support complex enterprise use cases at scale on a public blockchain, concerns about interoperability between multiple chain silos have already resulted in discussion about the role of public blockchains in enterprise processes. A lot of people are asking these questions, why enterprises haven't really adopted public DLTs or blockchain. Newcomers such as Hedera Hashgraph and Kadena will draw further attention to the debate, given the implications for process and risk management, to mention just a couple of key areas. It's clearly not a pure tech decision. That's key, that's important here. For now, only the most forward-looking enterprises and their technology partners are going where others fear to tread, but the topic is no longer off the table. So earlier on, I quickly skimmed through the Hedera.com site. If that was your first time seeing the website, you probably noticed some big enterprise names: Boeing, IBM, DLA Piper, Deutsche Telekom. These are the enterprises that this article is touching on. And we believe that one of the major concerns from an enterprise standpoint is the fact that DLT technology is known to go what's called through a fork. And in the early days, forking was deployed as a tool for the community to overcome obstacles and problems. And what we've recognized over the last couple of years, and you don't have to go very far in social media to see examples of this, is that forks just create an incredible amount of chaos and instability. So ultimately what we're talking about here is an enterprise like Boeing or IBM or what have you isn't going to invest millions of dollars into a Dapp and a use case and a business opportunity if there's some risk of a fork some weeks or months down the road, which will split off into a competing platform with competing cryptocurrency. So we believe that that this forking, although in the early days was useful, has now actually preventative mass adoption. And so enter Hedera Hashgraph, we became very controversial in this space when we started making claims and guarantees such as building on our platform will result in a guaranteed not to fork, because we have legal and technical controls in place not to fork. So if you are a developer building a Dapp and you require a high throughput, low latency, you finally have access for the first time, to build on a platform that guarantees your Dapp will not split off into a competing platform. And that's valuable information that we need to get out there. So.
Yeah, this is interesting one, Andrew. This prompted me to do a little research, just in the realm of predictions, and how long this stuff might take. And I looked up. I came across this Harvard Business Review article. I was talking about the comparisons between TCP/IP protocol and blockchain now, and they were first using this in 1972 to send communications back and forth, but it wasn't until over 23 years later that there was any type of broad adoption for just basic things like email communications. So that took 25 years, even though they knew it in the mid 70s what this could do. It took over 20 years for people to start really having and using private email addresses. And the other one I saw, this was a separate article, I didn't know where it was, but the invention of penicillin, when they recognized it, it took, I think, almost 20 to 30 years before it was in wide use, even though they had it there. I'm not sure why that one took so long, but there's this thing called the 30-year rule, which I was doing a little research on as well, where it might be slower than you think to have the adoption, but then once there's like a trigger event or something happens, then the floodgates open and you're left wondering, how did this all happen overnight? So it seems like we're still in that early phase. It's pretty exciting though to think how much more accelerated things could be now. I mean, when you think of something like TCP/IP, nobody even had computers, So that makes sense why it may have taken a while. They were just learning about computers and for the first time, but now that seems to me it should be rapidly accelerated, and everybody's spending so much time and resource. And this article particularly talks about the resources that the forward-looking companies are spending on, and what might be, it's almost like a guide. I read it as a guide to what's the appropriate amount of resources we should be spending time on this right now. And it seems like in financial markets, they're ahead, and things like manufacturing and things like that will be slower to follow. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's valuable. Valuable. Thanks for sharing that. You actually reminded me, and I can't remember where this quote comes from, but oftentimes you can overestimate what you can achieve in 1 year, but you underestimate what you achieve in 10 years. And I follow various futurists out there, and what I've come to realize is that the human mind is designed to think very linearly, and human beings are awful at thinking exponentially. And the reason why this ties in is because exponential technology, which ultimately was what we're talking about right now, is growing exponentially. So we're gonna do an awful job of accurately predicting where we're going to be 5 years from now, because the rate of acceleration is accelerating. So yeah, you pointed out a fantastic example there of it taking 20 years before a thing like email became in existence. But fast forward to 2019, here we are almost in 2020, and the rate of acceleration is far, far quicker than that we experienced back in the 70s, right? So it's an interesting conversation that we're in right now, where we've always said, you can hear all kinds of people quoting that we're in early days, very much in early days, and it's going to take time to work out the bugs, so to speak. Okay, so moving on here, we've got some YouTube clips that I wanted to touch on really quickly before we wrap things up. So this is, we're humbled. Hedera Hashgraph is a recent Entrepreneurship Award recipient from the town of Richardson, which is just outside of Dallas. That's where our head office is located. And it says right here, the Entrepreneurship Award is presented to a Richardson company or individual who has contributed significant time and resources to entrepreneurship in Richardson. So we are humbled, and I'm so thankful to accept this award. Looks like we already got a couple comments down here. Money Reset, congratulations, Manson Leemon. More accolades to come, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Money Reset. Well, I'm gonna give you a thumbs up there. Thank you. And unfortunately, it looks like the last one is a little bit of hate, but that's what happens in social media. You're going to come across some hate too. So moving on, we got another video here. I thought they did a fantastic job. Hedera Hashgraph HBAR project review, the 3rd generation public ledger by Token Metrics. This is my first time coming across this YouTube channel before, Token Metrics, and they clearly do a very thorough job. I'm going to give them a thumbs up. Right in this part of the video, he actually quotes George Gilder, who is a famous author, recently more famous for the book called Life After Google. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. And he shares one of George Gilder's quotes here: "This fast and efficient system may well prevail as the bottom layer of blockchains." Because Hedera Hashgraph is, our claim to fame is fast, fair, and secure. And because we are a very different DLT. Some people use the term blockchain as a way to describe the overall encompassing DLT space. Some people use that word for that. And other people use blockchain to actually define the type of DLT, which means a chain of blocks, which clearly Hedera Hashgraph is not a blockchain. We follow a DAG. We have a DAG, directed acyclic graph data structure that we follow. And we also are not proof of work, we're proof of stake. So we're extremely different than any other DLT out there in the space. And we're noticing a lot more understanding in recent weeks and months that people are realizing that Hedera Hashgraph is very different from anything else that you're going to see out there. So they did a great video. So happy to highlight this. Excuse me for all of you watching this recording or the live stream. Dave Hooper says it right here: Hashgraph is only temporarily centralized for its security, but it's eventually be the most decentralized. And Dave is accurate in saying that, because the eventual goal is that we're going to expand out to millions of nodes. Right now, we need to have the nodes be trusted because we're bootlegging the system. We have to scale up in a responsible and methodical way. If you just threw millions of nodes out there in one day, then you're going to have a security problem on your hands. And so there's a very real way to scale, and that's why Hedera Hashgraph has such a clear plan in place to become more and more decentralized. Dr. Leemon Baird has a fantastic YouTube a webinar that discusses this, and I highly recommend checking that out. I should share that down in the comments. And Nick Gibbs, thank you so much for this comment. It would have been worth mentioning that because the tech is patented, it wouldn't fork like other distributed networks. So we just touched on this earlier on. This is a big pro because enterprises and Dapp can have confidence to build on Hashgraph without fear of it splitting into 2 or more networks. Also, the centralized aspect of Hedera Hashgraph is temporary, with an eventual rollout to permissionless anonymous nodes. I could go on and on. Nick made some really good points there. So thank you so much for highlighting those differences. And it's going to take time for people to understand the differences between Hedera Hashgraph and other DLTs. So moving on, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say on that video, I thought the metrics that they used to come up with their score, which was, if you watch their video, it was 70.6%, which is actually a very high score. In comparison to some of the other projects they look at. I was really impressed too with just the metrics that they put together on their spreadsheet there to come up with this. I guess it's a little bit of an arbitrary scoring system, but hey, it seems to work, and it was pretty thorough, right down to everything. But I think, with those 2 points, the not having forking and the governance, and these are actually positives. I mean, and the fact that Hedera was so far forward thinking on these. You look at people in the space who have these ideas and they just don't hold up to time. Well, Manson Leemon must have been thinking about this so far back to implement this, even, when Hedera was announced in whenever that was, March of 2018. I remember it was this big sign with like a fork with the Ghostbusters, no forks here thing. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but it makes perfect sense. And I think that would be, obviously for any enterprise looking to build on something, they can't risk having all of their work and having that type of decision to make. So yeah, these guys did a great job. I thought that was interesting. So.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Actually, I should have made mention of that myself. I was very impressed with how thorough they are. They clearly put a lot of time and effort in evaluating different DLTs with their spreadsheet and their scoring metrics. Perhaps we're so different that we don't fit as well into scoring metrics because what one person will consider a pro, someone else will consider a con, which
Right.
obviously will have a huge effect on the final score output. But I think they did a great job. I think this video deserves more attention. I think people are starting to become more and more aware of what these words mean exactly. And Hedera Hashgraph was extremely controversial when we first announced the no forking guarantee. And I think I should quickly mention too, if you're a developer and you're looking for the forking ability, you have countless of options. There, you could go almost to any DLT platform and find a way to still deploy forking if you absolutely require it. But for those developers who don't want forking and don't want the risk of that forking brings with it, then the answer is clear. You're going to want to take a very hard look at Hedera Hashgraph. So yeah, there's some very big differences.
Important to note there, I think the only real drawback on the main score, everything was excellent. And then there was sort of like a pretty heavy deduction for the centralization. But if you understand how the security of the network works and what the roadmap is for the network, I think that's actually one of the best parts of the network. Yeah, it seems centralized now, but I mean, you have to start somewhere before you can't just roll it out to a million nodes, right? So
yeah, I agree with you there. And I think also what we're running into today, you see it in Twitter, you see it all over the place, is that people have very different definitions of centralized or decentralized. Much like people have very different definitions of the word risk, because some people claim that Hedera Hashgraph is centralized, very centralized. But I would argue that what some people are saying is compared to what? Because other platforms have a very centralized core team of developers that make all the decisions. And well, who are these developers? Where are they from? Where do they live? Are they all basically, within the same block or the same city or the same country? Like that to me sounds very centralized versus a governing board of huge enterprises that need to protect their brand, need to protect their, they already know they're under the magnifying glass for regulations, for law, for taxes, they have a lot of attention on them, and they're incentivized to always make the right decision because they do not want to damage their brand. Not to mention that these governing council members are spread out across a wide range of industries, spread out geographically across the planet, and also distributed across time, since they're maxed out at 2 terms of 3 years each, and then they have to vacate that seat. So they have to be okay with whatever decisions they help contribute to, and then someone else will take their seat. So when you look at all the details, as they say, the devil's in the details. If you look at all the details, I do not see a more decentralized approach out there other than the Hedera Hashgraph Governing Council model. I don't see another model out there that's more decentralized. An enterprise is incentivized to make the best decisions possible, whereas an individual is going to have less pressure to make the best decision for the good of the whole. That's the only point that I wanted to touch on. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you. And we're going to move on with another video here, which is actually also from the same YouTube channel, Token Metrics. This one is titled Hedera Hashgraph Code Review, the 3rd generation public ledger, Token Metrics. So we have a blockchain developer here who took the time to evaluate our code. And so he highlights right here, Hedera promises a very scalable, high throughput solution with more than 10,000 TPS and a very low average transaction fee. Here we again, I see it again and again and again. Developers see this TPS, this transactions per second metrics, and are blown away that this is even possible. With the fact that I've already highlighted, we can achieve finality with less than 2 seconds, at least currently right now, that's where it's at. And we're nowhere near the 10,000 TPS because we still have much more room for dApps to build on top of us. Some dApps have a much more higher demand than others. And as soon as there becomes a need to scale the TPS up, we'll be able to deploy that because this technology was built from the ground up with sharding in mind, which means latency should never be an issue, and your dApp will never be negatively impacted by too many transactions per second or too many dApps building on the platform. Okay, moving on. So wanted to touch on some social sizzlers. This is the section of the live stream where we like to highlight some of the posts that outperformed the rest of the pack. And this was a fantastic blog recently, how AdsDax built a scalable decentralized message queue with Hedera Hashgraph. If you are a developer who requires high throughput, low latency like these guys, you are going to want to take a close look at this use case. So take a look at this tweet and click on the blog right here. And it just did extremely well compared to the other tweets that went out last week. So clearly a lot of people are interested in this. I'll just click on it, click on the blog, and then it'll pop up right here. So give that a read. You will be glad you did. Fantastic use case. Their metrics are just blowing everybody away right now. I was surprised to see how this tweet did. This tweet outperformed as well. Clearly people are concerned about the regulatory headwinds in the US. And Brett McDowell, who is a part of Hedera Hashgraph, he's our executive director of the council. He participated in the Crypto Invest Summit and participated in this panel where they touched on that. I didn't get a recording for this, which is a real shame. If a recording pops up somewhere, I will be sure to share it for everybody here, just so you are aware. And then this tweet gets an honorable mention, because I literally just posted it a few hours ago. So it doesn't have the time yet to really show me what kind of clicks it's going to get. But I was very excited to post this. And if you haven't checked it out already, please do. We have an hour and 15-minute presentation here of Dr. Leemon Baird at the University of Oxford, where he presented to a room full of graduate students and had to throw in the hashtag math is fun here. Leemon really was on fire for this presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have a video, we do have the audio. And what we did is we paired it up with his slide deck. So it'll be like you were right there. The Oxford students asked Dr. Leemon Baird some really thought-provoking questions. And you could hear it in his voice how excited he gets when he's in his element and is able to teach someone, especially when they're interested in math or computer science. He's in his element, and you've seen nothing like it. If you haven't seen Dr. Leemon Baird present before, I highly recommend you do. So check out our tweet here. Yeah, look at that. It's already got 26 likes, and I only posted it a few hours ago. So we'll probably touch on this again next week to see how it did. But you will be glad to check this out, especially if you were in this space.
Yeah, I look forward to watching that one.
Yeah, a lot of work went into this one, and I was super pumped. I was anxious to get this one out. I was super excited to get this one out. Okay, so now that we've gone through the news, let's get back to the live stream here, slide deck, and we're going to wrap things up for everybody. So before we go, these are the social scissors. Before we go, I would like to quickly announce our hero of the week. This portion of the live stream is where we like to single out a single community member who has gone above and beyond to contribute value to the community. We got Dilly Dilly here, and there's his Telegram. So please make sure you send him a note and thank him for his support and his help. Dilly Dilly, you're gonna have to reach out to me on Telegram, or I'll ping you after this live stream. We are going to get you a discount code for the Hedera store, and it's just a small appreciation for us to recognize the value that you bring the community. So you mean a lot to us and a lot to the community members. And so every week we like to single out somebody. And this week, Dilly Dilly, it was easy to pick you, my friend. So going to reach out to you here shortly. Congratulations to you. And then a quick reminder, I already touched on this at the beginning of the live stream. If you were a developer, please check out docs.hedera.com/docs to get yourself onboarded and access to all the relevant information that you're going to need to start building on Hedera, because we have all kinds of TPS available for you, and you're going to be glad you did. So before signing off, though, I should quickly ask Anthony if we had any questions in the live chat that we should address, or if we're good to go today. Okay. Looks like here we go. What do we got here? Good to go. Awesome. Thank you, Anthony, for the confirmation. Hey, Jesse, I want to quickly thank you one more time for joining us on the live stream. I really appreciate it, taking time out of your day on Thanksgiving weekend. And yeah, it looks like Anthony already addressed all the questions that were asked in the live stream. Thank you, sir. But Jesse, thanks for taking the time to join us. I know the
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and also thank you for sharing your use case and your idea around decent. I want to learn more about this. I agree with you, it's early days, but this is a very important use case that I would like to see more attention and focus on. Maybe I'm a little ahead of the game on that aspect, but I want to thank you for your efforts and what you're doing for the community as well. It doesn't go unnoticed, and you're a valuable part of the community. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Right on. So if you guys like this live stream, make sure you smash that like button down below. Leave us a comment and share this content with your developer friends. I'm sure they will be very grateful and thankful for you to bring in this information to their attention. And other than that, we will see you next time. And I believe next time we will be on a Monday. So take care, everybody.